How many of you know one of those people? How many of you are one of those people? Let's be honest, all right. If you got your Bibles, go ahead and turn to Luke chapter 6. Luke chapter 6. If you don't have your Bibles, I would encourage you, there's a YouVersion app. It's a free Bible app. It's amazing. I use it. My family uses it. It's a great tool to have as well. While you're going to Luke 6, I want to tell you a story about a group of Hell's Angels who went into a diner to eat. And they noticed a truck driver who was kind of sitting off in the corner by himself eating. And of course, one of the big burly boys thought he'd have a little fun with him and walked up to him and kind of started razzing him a little bit, but truck driver just completely ignored him. So, he's getting a little bit frustrated here, so this big burly Hell's Angel guy, he takes his finger and he sticks it right in the truck driver's spaghetti dinner, right? Again, no response, nothing. Well, now this Hell's Angel guy, he's about to have it, he's like, okay, let's see what we can do. So he takes the plate full of spaghetti and he dumps it over the truck driver's head. No response whatsoever. The truck driver just gets up like nothing happened, went over, paid his bill, got up and left the restaurant. The Hell's Angel guy was like just blown away. He had no idea what to do. And he said to the waiter, he said, that guy ain't much of a man, is he? And he said, yeah, he ain't much of a truck driver either. Just took out a bunch of choppers on his way out of the parking lot. Welcome to week 4 of our series, You Drive Me Crazy. We've been talking about relationships and how no matter who you are, no matter where you're at, we all have people that in our lives that drive us crazy. And sometimes we're married to them, sometimes they live in our house, sometimes we work with them, sometimes they're part of our church, but all of us in our life have those frustrating people in our lives. And I think this series is so important as we're talking about the season of going into becoming a church of life groups, not with life groups. I'm going to just tell you something. There's going to be somebody in your life group that might drive you crazy, okay? And if you don't know who that is, it's probably you, okay? You're probably that person. It's just, that's life. We're in this together, and it can be, relationships can be messy. It can be frustrating. It can be emotional. So we're trying to have some fun with it, with these videos and with these jokes, but I'm not trying to make light of it because I know that that's how divorce happens. That's how children go astray, those types of things. So I'm not trying to make light of it, but this is what I want to ask you today. I sometimes think that God allows people in our life who drive us crazy. Here's what I mean by that. I'm okay with people that I'm okay with. If everybody's like me and I get along with everybody, things usually go great. I wonder if sometimes God puts certain people in my life for the sole purpose of helping me grow. Because here's what I'm going to tell you. Every single person you stand eyeball to eyeball with is a child of the God of the universe. It's someone who Jesus Christ died on the cross for. Amen. And we need to have that perspective when we're looking at people. Because I'm telling you something, that person does not drive God crazy. That person drove God to the cross to love him and to give himself up for them. And so I want to tell you this. Every single one of us, this is kind of hard of what we're talking about here. Every single one of us at some point in our life has driven God crazy. Can we agree with that? And God has had to deal with us. And he's never given up on us, so we need to make sure we're doing that for other people. So we grow the most, I think, around people that we don't like. So I would say, if you have people in your life who don't drive you crazy, maybe let's be intentional. Let's try to find some. Let's try to grow. Let's get better and make that better. So the first week we talked about love without rescuing. We talked about grace and truth. If you missed these messages, I would encourage you to go to our website, yankton.church. You can also go to our YouTube channel, Celebrate Yankton. All of our messages are on there. And we do that intentionally because we want you to be able to see that. We know you can't be here every weekend, but we put that up there so you can see that. So if you're a first-time guest, I'd encourage you to go back and watch that. We talked about grace and truth. How all of us have kind of a tendency. So I tend to lean more to the grace side, right? Everything's great, it's okay, no worries. And that's okay, but what happens is sometimes we become enablers. And we allow things to happen, and we don't speak truth in life. But then the other side of that coin is true too as well, where sometimes we're too heavy on the truth, where we're beating people over the head. And I think the church is probably more guilty of this part than anything, where we put too much on truth and not so much on grace, because then we confront people by trying to control them instead of allowing God to do that. And we talked about how when people drive us crazy, what we're really saying is we're trying to be God in their life. And we allow that. So week 2, we talked about conflict. Conflict is inevitable. How I choose to respond is always my choice. And if I don't respond in a healthy way, it becomes toxic not only in that relationship, but in all my other relationships. And last week, we talked about the people-pleasing trap. And I say that trap. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and watch the message, because we talked about what it means to be in a people-pleasing trap. And the way we can break free from that trap of trying to please everybody all the time is we have to change the way that we think. And we change the way we think by reading God's Word and being a part of it. So today, we're going to talk about what I mentioned in that story about our truck driver friend. Controlling our reactions. When somebody drives us crazy and we want to do something that's not okay, what should we respond? How do we control that? So before we do that, I want to look at our key verse. It's found in Ephesians 4:15. Now, we're not going to put it up on the screen. If you're a guest, it's on your note sheet. You can read off the top of it. But if you've been here for a couple weeks, what I'm challenging you to do is I'm challenging you to memorize this verse, to learn it, to put it in your heart. It's part of our changing our mind, is to know our verse. So I'm going to challenge you, if you've been here at least 2 weeks of the series, you're going to try to say this verse without looking at the screen and without reading your notes. Okay, you guys ready? Now, if you're a guest, you're off the hook. You can totally read it off the notes. Ready? Let's read it together nice and loud. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing in every way more and more like Christ. Okay, that's a good job. Let's go ahead and put it up on the screen. And let's go ahead and say it again together, nice and loud. Instead, we will speak the truth in love, growing every way more and more like Christ. Ephesians 4:15. That's the address where that verse lives. Book of Ephesians, chapter 4, verse 15. So if we want to grow more like Christ, we have to learn how to control our reactions. So let's go ahead and go to Luke 6. I'm going to start at the 27th verse. And this is Jesus talking. Now, we follow Jesus, so if Jesus says something, we probably need to pay attention to what he's saying. Agree with that? Okay, so here we go. Verse 27. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn to them the other also. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. Give to everyone who asks you. And if anyone takes what doesn't belong to you, do not demand it back. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, we're going to pause here for a second. I want everybody to look right here. Are you kidding me? Right? Love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Are you serious? Like, that's not what I want to do. Right? I've heard this phrase, if you want to get mad, get what? Don't get mad, get even, right? That's what I want to do. That's my response. And I'm sure you guys have felt that way too, right? That's our human nature, and that's our natural response. But this is exactly what God wants us to do. He wants us to learn how to control our responses, even when people drive us crazy. And we're going to put a pin in that verse. We're going to come back to it a little bit later, because I want you to take your notes out. It's in the CFL there. And there's 3 keys to controlling our responses. And we're going to talk about those 3 keys, because my nature, my natural gut instinct when somebody does something that drives me crazy is to get even with them, or to make it back, or to get it back. So how are we going to do that? So here's the first one. I want you to write this in. We can't take it personally. We can't take it personally. That's the first one. How do we control our response? Now, I want you to look at somebody, and I want you to say this. Find somebody that's next to you, look at them and say, it's not about you. All right. Now I want you to look back at that person. I want you to say, it's not about you either. Listen, when someone is rude, when somebody does something frustrating, it says more about them and where they're at. There's something going on inside of them that's causing them to react that way. So why on earth would I take it personal? Why would I take it personally when they respond in that way? Now, there are some things that should offend us. Okay, there are certain things that are offend, like racism. That should offend us. If somebody is racist, that should offend us. If the Bible says if somebody hurts a child, okay, that should offend us. Okay, those are things that can definitely offend us. I'm not talking about that. What I'm saying is when somebody cuts you off in traffic, okay, when somebody gets in front of you in the grocery line, whatever that is, there's probably something, a coworker who you very calmly talk to them and they explode back at you, right? There is something about that. We should always know that that's more about them than it is about us. But here's what I'm going to say. This is the key. When people are rude, it speaks about them. But when I respond, that speaks more about me. Here's what I mean by that. If you have a sponge and you squeeze a sponge, what comes out of it? Water, right? Whatever's in that sponge, the sponge soaks it up. When you squeeze it, what's inside of it comes out of it. Here's what I say. When we get squeezed, when life squeezes us, when people around us squeeze us, whatever's inside of us is what comes out of us. If you are struggling with you controlling your reactions, I'm going to challenge you with that. What's inside of you? Because the more Jesus, the more God's word, the more other godly people that we have in us, the more when we get squeezed, the more goodness, the more peace, the more joy that's going to come out of us. When you see somebody who responds in a negative way, you can see that there's probably not a lot of Jesus in there. And so that's what we need to think about as we do that. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 6. And I love this verse. Fools. Who wants to be a fool? Nobody wants to be a fool. Fools show their annoyance all at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. I absolutely love the movie Back to the Future. Any Back to the Future fans in here? You know that was 30 years ago? Man, that's crazy to think about now, right? Marty McFly, you guys, if you haven't seen the movie, there's this teenage kid. He goes back in time, and he tries to change the past. And there's this scene where Marty McFly is a very proud, kind of cocky young guy. Michael J. Fox, that's who played. I can't think of his name. Michael J. Fox, right? This proud, cocky young guy. And there's this thing that if anybody ever says it to him, it just ticks him off. Anybody remember what it was? Chicken. What's the matter, McFly? Chicken? And what happened was somebody said that to him, and it caused him to respond in a negative way, and it ended up impacting the rest of his life and the rest of his future. And he had this time machine, and he found that out. So he went back to that situation. There's a really powerful scene. It's not one of the main scenes in the movie, but I love it, because it goes back to that moment where they say, what's the matter, McFly? Chicken? And he has a chance to make that decision. And he gets to do that over again. And he chooses to respond in a healthy way, and it literally changes the course of his life. Now, why do I say that to you? We never know what hangs in the balance of our decisions. We have no idea what can happen by simply just turning the other cheek in one situation, choosing not to spite back when we feel like we're justified in doing so. We have no idea how that can change the course of not only our lives, but the person that we're responding to. Just in one moment, we can make that happen. So we cannot take it personally. You've probably heard this before. Hurting people do what? Hurt people, right? So when you're taking it personal, you're hurting people. You're saying, I'm hurt. There's something inside of me that I have to take it personal. So we can't take it personally. Stop taking it personally. Here's the second one. I want you to write this in. We can't take it public. We can't take it public. The greatest way to destroy any relationship is to gossip. And we've talked about this in here before. And I always find it interesting. If I ask for I'm not going to do this, so please don't do this. But if I ask for a show of hands, if I said, how many of you, if I had an issue with you, how many of you would want me to come directly to you and talk to you about it, right? I think every hand would probably go up if we asked that. Then why don't we do that? Why is it so much easier when I have a problem with somebody else that I go and talk to somebody else or somebody else or somebody else, and I want to, in my heart, and this is me talking, I'm not pointing any fingers, please don't get defensive. I'm talking about my own heart. I want to build this little cohort of people that think I'm so amazing, I'm so awesome. Isn't that person terrible? Look at what they've done to me. Aren't I so justified in feeling that way? Why is that about us? What is that about me that says that I don't go to that person? Because we would all agree. If somebody does something that offends us, we would want them to come to us and ask us about it, but yet we don't do that. And friends, I just want to tell you, Proverbs chapter 17, verse 9, and says, whoever would foster love covers an offense, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends. Would you agree with that? How many of us in here have had relationships that were destroyed because of that type of behavior? And that's what I'm saying, like, when you gossip about somebody else, when you take your hurt and you share it with other people, this is what you're saying. Basically, I have to be perfect, right? Because Jesus said this, not me. He said the measure that you use will be used against you, right? So if you're perfect, if you've got everything right, go free and talk to everybody about everybody. But the one person who did was Jesus, and he didn't do that for me. What did he do instead? He climbed up on the cross and died for me. Friends, I want to say this. I think we in the church, if you're here today, and you are not a follower of Jesus Christ, if this church thing you're just kind of checking out, looking, I want you to know, welcome home. We're glad that you're here. We're a church for people who don't like church. That's okay. But if you're here today, and you've put your hand up and you said, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ, and you said, I'm going to try to live my life the way that Jesus Christ said, this is not optional. This is a command from Jesus Christ. And I want the church, I want this church to be a place where if I have an issue with somebody, I go right to them. Because that's what the Bible says. It says, I'm going to talk to them. We're going to deal with it. If that doesn't work, we'll bring somebody else in, somebody who cares, loving, and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to confront it. 1 Peter 3:9. This is a verse that as I was preparing this message, it struck me so hard. 1 Peter 3:9, it says, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. That's a command, not optional. Do not. On the contrary, listen to this. Repay evil with blessing, because to do this you were called to, so that you might what? Inherit a blessing. Every time you do that, you inherit a blessing. Can I tell you the opposite of that is true? Every time you take your hurts to other people, you forfeit the blessing of God. God loves you. He wants what's best for you, but He cannot honor when you gossip about other people when you're hurt. He can't do it. And every time you do that, you fall, like we talked about last week, you're in that people-pleasing trap. You build this little group of people that think you're awesome. They think you're amazing. You've got the approval of man. Boy, you're sure justified, Jeff. That's what you did. But you forfeit the blessing of God. And I said this last week. If you fail, people will crucify you. So do you want to have the approval of people who are going to crucify you when you fail? Or do you want to have the approval of Jesus Christ, who was crucified for you and took all that sin and all that shame and all that guilt and done that for you? Every time you do that, we can't take it personal. But more importantly, we cannot take it public. We can't do it. So here's the third thing, and you're going to want to write this down. Here's the third one. Move to higher ground. Move to higher ground. I will never forget the very first time I flew in an airplane. I was flying from Minneapolis to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And if you guys have had this experience before, when we were going over Pittsburgh, there was a big storm below us, right? And I remember being in that plane. I was 15 years old. I remember looking out my window and looking up at the sky. And it was the bluest sky I had ever seen in my life. I can still see it in my head right now. When I'm looking up, I can see that. And the sun was just brilliant. And then there's a storm below us. So it's like literally this whole carpet was just clouds, right? And it's white, so it's reflecting the sunlight, so it's making the sky even bluer. Absolutely gorgeous. Loved it. And as we started to descend into Pittsburgh, again, if you've flown an airplane, you've had this experience. We got down, we started going through the clouds, and then there's a moment in the clouds where it's completely pitch black and you can't see a thing. And then it's very brief as we continued to descend, we broke through the clouds, and underneath of it, it was a rainy, cloudy, stormy day. And I remember as we were circling the airport, getting ready, and as you get lower, you can kind of see houses and cars and people walking around. And I still remember to this day feeling so sorry for those people. Because I'm like, they have no idea how beautiful today is. Like, I was just above these clouds, and it's the bluest sky I'd ever seen, and it was the sunshine. And all these people down here are in this cloudy, stormy, rainy day. And I just felt so sorry for them. And friends, that's what I'm trying to get at today. I don't know the storm you're facing in your life. I don't. And I'm never going to try to make light of what other people have done to you. I know that if we had the chance to go around this room, you could share your hurts. You could share your pains. You could share, and probably everyone in this room would agree with you. Okay, and so please don't hear that. I'm not trying to make anybody be on the defense. But what I'm here to say is this. We say this every week. God is good. All the time. And all the time, God is good. I don't know what storm you're facing in life, friends. But when we move to higher ground, when we get above those clouds and we see, I'm telling you, there's a blue sky and there's sunshine. And we need to be the people that have that perspective. We need to be able to look in those situations and move to higher ground. Is it easy? No! But we can do it, and we can do that. So here's a couple things that's going to help you move to higher ground. How do we do it? That's the hard part, right? I think we'd agree, but how do we move to higher ground? Here's the first step. And you want to write this down. It's in your notes. It takes two to argue. It takes two to argue. I know you think I'm brilliant right now, right, Pastor? That was amazing you thought about that. Do you all know people who argue with yourself? Anybody argue with yourself? Okay, it's okay to argue with yourself. I do that too. It's only not okay if you lose. If you lose that argument, then there's issues, okay? All right. There's a pastor by the name of Charles Spurgeon, who I absolutely love. He was a pastor in London in the 1800s, one of the heroes of the faith for me. And he tells this story about when he learned this concept of how it takes two to argue. He found out there was this older lady in his church who was frustrated with him. And of course, she was doing the godly thing and telling everybody in the church except going to him. Again, not the godly thing. But he found out about it. He found out she was going to come to him and she was just going to lay into him. So he's like, okay, two can play this game. And so she comes up and sure enough, she just starts giving him a tongue lash. She does all this stuff and pastor blah, 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 blah. And he does something that she didn't expect. And this is what he said. He said, "Why, thank you, ma'am. It is definitely a beautiful day." And it totally just, like, obviously ticked her off. And she's like, she starts increasing her volume and starts screaming and yelling at him and just continuing to go off more and more. And Spurgeon says, yes, my dear, perhaps it will rain, perhaps it will not. And as she walked away, she started walking away, and somebody had said, she said, not only is he a terrible pastor, he's also stone deaf. So, Proverbs 26:21. As charcoal to embers and as wood to fire, so is a quarrelsome person for kindling strife. The only thing worse than being a fool is arguing with one. Don't argue with somebody. Never, and I say this too, never step into an argument. Always step up to the argument. What do I mean by that? Taking the high road, move to higher ground. Don't get in an argument. Did you know that when somebody is angry or frustrated, they are not in their logical mind? We've known this now about the human brain. There's an emotional side of our brain that just gets clouded and the logic goes out the window. Now, I was going to make a husband-wife joke here, but I'm going to go with kids instead because I want to be safe here, okay? So how many of us have ever been with a child and the child is completely frustrated? Does any logic work in that situation? No, they're not, because they're not in their right state of brain. They're thinking something else. It's the same way as adults, when we're angry and we're frustrated. If we go in and we try to make our point, we try to reason with somebody, it's not going to work because they're not thinking right. We need to take a step back. How about this? How many of you have ever been angry or frustrated yourself and said something or done something in anger or frustration, and later when you calm down, you really regretted that? Am I alone? Anybody else ever done that? Okay, that's what that is. We have to be aware of that. We have to know that when people are coming at us and they're angry or they're frustrated, they're not in their right state of mind. Logic and reason isn't going to work. So why do we argue with them? Jesus said that in the passage we just read. He said, when someone slaps you on the cheek, what are you supposed to do? Turn them to the other. Now, he doesn't mean this cheek, okay? He means this cheek on his face, right? That's what he's saying. We need to make sure that we are not stepping into an argument. But here's the second one. And I don't want you to miss this part. Don't step into an argument, but here's the second one. Kill them with kindness. Kill them with kindness. Now, I don't want to give the impression, because I've heard this before, that as a Christian, that just means that you're a doormat. That you just lay down and you just let people just kind of walk over you. Remember we talked about that earlier, grace and truth. Right? We're not enabling people. I'm not saying that you shouldn't confront that. That's not what I mean. What I'm saying is how we do it makes a big difference. And turning the other cheek, what that looks like. You might have heard the phrase, bite your tongue. Anybody ever heard that? Bite your tongue? I don't think that's good wisdom. I think that's kind of foolishness. Because what happens when I bite my tongue is it hurts. I get hurt, right? And anytime that I do that, this is what inevitably happens. I end up sharing that with somebody else. If I don't speak to the person who's offended me, or if I don't deal with that issue, as much as I try, as hard as I try to do it, it will come out in other ways. And I need to make sure that I do that right away. So, how many of you have heard this phrase? If you can't say anything nice, I'm going to change that. If you can't say something nice, find something to say nice about them. Because if you don't, it's not going to work for you. Love your enemies. Kill them with kindness. Man, I would just say this. I hope you would agree with this. Somewhere in our country, we have lost the ability to disagree with each other. I see that all the time. We see it in politics, but just in life in general. Man, like, what would it look like if instead of arguing and fighting and doing those things, what if we just started to love each other and we just started to show kindness and show compassion to each other? Not spouting off at the mouth and not saying mean and hurtful things, but really just kind of being kindness and showing love. There's a story that I love from a book called Why I'm Afraid to Tell You Who I Am. The author's name is John Powell. And he tells the story when he was walking down the street with a friend, and they stopped at an old newspaper stand where a guy who sold newspapers was grumpy, old, rude guy. And keeping to form, he was precisely that. But as they walked away, John's friend turned to this guy and said, "Sir, you have a nice day." As they kept walking, Powell had to ask, is that man always that rude to you? And his friend said, "Yes, he is." And Powell asked him, "Are you always that nice to him?" He said, "Of course." Now I want to watch what he said there. He said, "I'm not going to let that one man ruin my day." But he didn't stop there. He said, "But I'm most definitely going to do everything I can to make sure he has a great one." And that's the heart of Christ right there. Is to say, People are going to be rude to us. We talked about that in week 2. We said we can't control other people's reaction. We can absolutely control how we choose to respond. And we need to do that. We need to say that. One of the things that I've found in life, I don't know if you guys have ever had this problem too, but we go to a restaurant. We go out to eat a lot. We love going out to eat. And in this country, we do this thing where, you tip the waiter or waitress, and that's their wage, basically. And usually they make less money because they make money off tips and those types of things. And I'm sure I do probably what a lot of you do, is if the service is really good, usually give what? Really good tip, right? Or average, those types of things. But if the service is really poor, what do? Tip meter starts to go down, right? And you start to do that, and you start to say, hey, I'm not going to tip you as high. This is what I'm asking. If Jesus was the patron of the restaurant and my life was the service that I was providing for Jesus, how do you think Jesus would tip me? I'm telling you, it's probably not going to be the greatest. I'm telling you, I'm not going to probably get the highest tip. I've probably given Jesus more bad service than I've given him good. But this is the interesting thing about what Jesus did for me. He didn't judge my life based on my performance. He judged my life based on his. And he said, Jeff, I love you. And I love you so much that I'm not going to pay you 15%. I'm not going to pay you 50%. I'm not going to pay you 80%. I'm going to pay it all. I'm going to take it all. I'm going to pay it all. Let's go back to that passage in Luke chapter 6. We left off at verse 31. I'm going to go back to verse 32, and we're going to talk about what Jesus says. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners love those who love them. Can I add to that? White supremacists really love each other. They do. If you're white, they really love you. What credit is that if we love people who are like us? And if you do good to those who do good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. There are a lot of people in social programs who do a lot of great things, right? That should be the church. And if you lend to those who you expect repayment from, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. This is what Jesus says. But love your enemies. I want to stop right there. That love. Do you really love your enemies? Because that's what Jesus said to do. And it's hard, it's frustrating. I know, I get it. And like I said before, I'm sure we could all share stories of people that we would all say, you don't have the right. But that's somebody who Jesus died for. Love your enemies. Do good to them and lend to them without expecting to get anything back. Then your reward will be great, and you will be called children of the Most High God, because He is kind to the ungrateful and wicked. Friends, this afternoon at 12:30, we're going to come back in this room, and we're going to talk about Celebrate Church. We're going to talk about who we are, our structure, our statements, our vision, those types of things. But I want to give you a little insight for those of you who maybe can't make it this week. But we're going to talk about this. The Celebrate Church, we're named Celebrate Church for a very specific reason. There's a story that's a little bit later in Luke. Jesus shares a story about a father who has 2 sons. And the one says, Dad, I want all my money right now. Which is basically in that culture his way of saying, Dad, I wish you were dead. And so the father, probably brokenhearted, gave the son all his inheritance. And if you've been in church, you probably know the story. He took it to a land, and he had a great time for a long time. He had a big party, and everything was great until the money ran out. And then he found himself lost, hurt, and the only job he could get was feeding pigs, which for a little Jewish boy was the lowest thing he could possibly get. And he sat there in that filth and that despair. And he had this thought. He said, man, my dad's hired servants eat better than these pigs do. What am I doing? I'm going to go back to my dad. And I'm going to say, and he rehearses his speech. He says, Dad, I know I don't deserve to be your son anymore. I just want to be your hired servant. He thinks about it all the way home. And he starts to make that long journey back home. And the Bible says that the father saw him while he was a long way off. I don't want you to miss that part. The father saw him from a long ways off because he was looking for him. He was standing there waiting for his son to come home. And as soon as his son started to say that speech that he rehearsed in his head so many times, his dad stopped him and he said, quit. Stop. And he told the servants, he said, go, get the fattened calf, put the best robes, put a ring on him, and we are going to celebrate. Because my son was lost and now he's found. Friends, that's why the name of this church is Celebrate. Because we're a place where I don't care what you've done. I want to say welcome home. Because I don't know what you've done, but I can tell you what, I put Jesus on the cross. My life, the stuff that I've done, has caused that. So I'm going to give the rest of my life to loving other people and to serving and to sharing his love. Not because of anything I've done. I don't deserve it. I deserve worse than that. But because of his love for me. That's the kind of church I want to be the pastor of. That's why we're called Celebrate Church. We want to be that place. We want to be that home. So I just want to get real practical here as we close. I just wanted to ask you this. Who is someone in your life right now who just drives you crazy? I want you to write their name down. I want you to think about it. I want you to write their name down. Or maybe this, how can I do something for someone without expecting something in return? Because a lot of times we'll give to people, but we want to get something back out of it. And how about this? How can I give my life away as Jesus did? I think there's a lot of people in this room that probably need to come back at 12:30. Go grab lunch, come back at 12:30, and we're going to talk more about that. How we can give our lives away for Jesus and how we can be that place and create that. Because people are going to drive us crazy. And when they do that, we cannot take it personal. We can't. It's not about you. It's never about you. Don't quit taking it personal. But more than that, we can't take it public, because when we do that, we're no better than the world. We have that in our world. We want to be the church of Jesus Christ, where, again, you can come here and we're going to protect you. The Bible says love always protects. We want to love you. Do we want you to stay in your sin? Of course not. Do we want to speak truth in your life? Absolutely we do. But we're going to do that in the safety of other people, and we're going to move to higher ground. We're not going to get stuck in arguments. The biggest thing we're going to do is we're just going to love people. Because love covers a multitude of offenses. That's what my Bible says. Friends, let's be that church. Let's go ahead and pray. God, in a minute, I'm going to have to come down off of the stage, and I'm going to have to live out what I just said. And that's the hard part. So God, I'm going to come before you right now, and in my heart, I need to ask you for forgiveness. Because there's been plenty of times, even this week, and probably even this morning, where I don't know that I've lived out these principles, and I want to let you know that I'm sorry. And I want to try to get better, God. I want to control my responses so I don't react, and I don't say or do something that's going to affect somebody in a way that could really impact, honestly, their eternity. And God, I pray that that would be our hearts. That we would look past those offenses and we would see what you did for us on the cross and that comparison of that. And that we could love them because, again, every person that I stand eyeball to eyeball with is somebody you went to the cross for. A child that you love dearly. Who am I? Who am I to speak ill of your son or your daughter? I can tell you how I feel about people who speak ill of my children. But that's what you see, God. Who am I to talk negatively about someone else and not go to them and talk to them about it? God, help us to have the wisdom and the courage and the strength and give us the words to show how we can move to higher ground, how we can control those responses, God, so they don't ultimately control us. We ask all these things in the matchless name of Jesus Christ our Lord.